The universe feels calm when viewed from a small blue world that orbits an ordinary star. We look upward and imagine patterns in the constellations. We follow the moon as it rises and falls. We tell ourselves that everything moves in perfect harmony, that cosmic forces are gentle, that the heavens above are reliable guardians of life. Yet this is a comforting fiction. Space is not peaceful. It is a battlefield of unimaginable gravity and ancient violence. The very calm we cherish exists only because we do not see the predators that move in silence. Among the most terrifying of these wanderers is the black hole. The name suggests emptiness, a hole carved into space. The truth is far stranger. A black hole is not a thing surrounded by space. It is space itself distorted, a region where gravity has won completely, where matter used to exist as the heart of a massive star and then collapsed inward without end. There is no solid core inside, no surface where a spaceship could land. Only a boundary called the event horizon, where escape becomes impossible, because even light cannot outrun gravity there. Imagine taking a star many times heavier than our sun and crushing it until it is smaller than a city. Its mass remains, its gravity remains. It simply becomes concentrated so intensely that space-time bows inward around it. Distances stretch, time itself slows. The black hole becomes a pit in reality that nothing can climb out of. Such objects are everywhere in the sky. Astronomers estimate that there are more than 100 million stellar mass black holes drifting through the Milky Way galaxy alone. Many of them are a few times heavier than our sun. Some may reach 20 times our sun's weight. Yet each one would be barely larger than a small island if you could somehow measure its size. They are the ghosts of stars that died in cataclysmic supernova explosions long before life walked upon Earth. Because black holes emit no light of their own, they usually glide unseen. Only when they feed from a nearby star do they announce themselves in fierce X-ray radiation. But most are solitary predators drifting through the galaxy with no companion to betray them. They leave no glow behind. They reflect nothing. They are invisible to the usual senses of the universe. Our solar system moves through the Milky Way as a quiet family of worlds held together by the gentle pull of the sun. We orbit calmly through a spiral arm filled with stars and drifting debris. It feels like a neighborhood that will remain stable forever. But what if one of those hidden remnants approached us? A black hole does not need to collide with Earth to destroy it. It does not need intent or malice. It simply follows the path that gravity dictates. And if that path crosses ours, then devastation follows as a consequence of physics. Some black holes are kicked from their birthplaces with tremendous speed during the moment their parent stars explode. Others are accelerated by passing too close to other massive objects and are slingshotted across the galaxy. Imagine an object heavier than 10 suns traveling through space at a significant fraction of the speed of light, not crawling through the cosmos, but racing like a bullet fired across interstellar distances. At these speeds, a black hole becomes a weapon of gravity. The kinetic energy it carries is beyond comprehension. There is no force that slows it. It will not drift gently into place. It hurtles through space-time like a storm that refuses to be seen until too late. Far away in the frozen darkness beyond the orbit of distant planets, the first hints of change would arrive. The fragile arrangements of icy worlds in the outer solar system would tremble. Comets in the far-off Oort cloud would feel a tiny tug from an intruder that has not yet revealed itself. Their distant paths would shift ever so slightly. Planetary orbits might stretch into delicate ellipses. The effects would be subtle at first, detectable only through careful measurements made by scientists who might not yet understand the cause. Yet humanity would remain blissfully unaware. The night sky would still appear calm. The stars would shine as they always have. Children would sleep. Travelers would cross oceans. No one would sense the faint gravitational howl building in the deep. but space would already be warning us. Curvature announces itself long before its source becomes visible. Light traveling past a black hole bends along curved paths. The background stars would begin to stretch and distort ever so slightly, as if the sky were a cosmic painting being pulled inward by an unseen hand. Meanwhile, the predator passes closer. Most telescopes would see nothing at all. There would be no planet reflecting sunlight, no glowing surface, only a ripple in the starlight. Even advanced observatories might question their own readings. What could twist a constellation without revealing a visible body? The answer would be approaching faster than any spacecraft built by human hands could dream of matching. A silent shadow, a fallen star, a well of gravity so deep that physics as we know it frays at the edge of its influence. Earth would still spin unaware, our sun would still shine, but our fate would now be tied to something that cares nothing for life. The deeper threat arrives not from the black hole being seen, but from what its presence would do to time itself. When an object approaches the speed of light, strange effects emerge. To the black hole, the distance across our solar system might seem much smaller than it is. From our point of view, however, it would approach with such speed that the universe appears to twist around it. Ahead of the black hole, starlight would be compressed into a brightened, distorted patch. Behind it, light would stretch and fade into darkness. It would look as though the night sky were being gathered into a funnel-shaped illusion that races toward us. Relativistic motion bends perception into paradox. The black hole would seem to shift position faster than light itself could travel. This is not because it actually breaks the laws of physics, but because the light reaching our eyes would be so distorted by its speed and gravity that all sense of normal space is lost. Anyone searching the heavens with a telescope might first describe it as a patch of stars that refuses to behave, a region where patterns warp and constellations bow inward like reflections in a funhouse mirror. Yet there is no mirror. The curvature is real. Space-time is changing shape. The greatest warning sign would be the disruption of planetary motion. The orbits that keep our worlds in balance are fragile agreements between gravity and motion. Even a gentle push upon this cosmic choreography could send planets drifting into new paths. Jupiter might wander outward, Saturn inward. The Kuiper Belt could be stirred like dust in a windstorm. These changes might begin years before the visitor arrives. Observatories would record deviations from predicted positions. Reports would circulate describing unexplained anomalies. Astronomers would run simulations late into the night trying to pinpoint the cause. Most would suspect hidden dwarf planets or measurement mistakes. Few would leap immediately to the idea that a stellar corpse is storming through the void toward us at relativistic speed. Earth would be the last to notice. Our orbit is tighter. Our sun's gravity grips us more firmly. The changes here would at first be too slight to panic the public. A small variation in the length of a year, tides that stray a little higher than normal, the pull of the moon adjusting ever so slightly in monthly cycles. Nothing catastrophic at first, nothing that could not be dismissed as coincidence or minor fluctuation. But nature would already be preparing a violent transformation. As the black hole draws closer, the sun's own orbit in the galaxy begins to twist. Our star is no longer the dominant gravitational figure in the immediate neighborhood. A rival mass grows in influence with every passing moment. The balance that has protected Earth for billions of years becomes a fragile thing, stretched between two colossal forces. The solar system becomes a battlefield of gravity. Everything that can move will move differently. Everything that can fall will find something new to fall toward. Animals on Earth would sense nothing of this. The air would remain breathable. The oceans would roll in familiar tides. Human civilization would continue under the illusion of permanence. But above the atmosphere, satellites might begin drifting into strange trajectories. Space agencies would scramble to correct them. Engineers would check and recheck their mathematics. But no matter how the numbers are arranged, something unseen would continue to pull. Eventually, the scientific community would reach a terrifying conclusion. The cause is not a planet, not a comet, not any known object within sight. The only solution that fits every observation is invisible and immensely heavy. An object moving far too fast to be captured by our sun. Its gravity overwhelming every rule we thought we understood. Panic would grow. Not in cities or homes at first, but in the quiet corridors of observatories. In rooms where physicists huddle over screens. In late-night calls between research centers scattered across Earth. The realization would spread like a storm. Humanity would be standing on the edge of a discovery that is also a death sentence. Someone would speak the word that everyone fears. Black hole. We would watch the night sky as though it were turning hostile for the first time in our history. That invisible predator would continue to descend upon us, dragging a changing pattern of stars along with it. The countdown would have begun, because gravity does not negotiate. It does not warn with sirens or explosions. It moves silently. It approaches with absolute certainty. There is a moment in every approaching disaster when there is still hope. A moment when the threat might still veer away. That moment would pass quickly. The visitor would not alter course. It would not slow. It would not care. Earth would soon learn what it means to be noticed by something that destroys without intention. Something that does not hate us. Something that simply exists. The fear would grow heavier as the predictions sharpen. Computers would run countless simulations. Everyone would end the same way. Earth's future would be decided not by war or climate or disease, but by a visitor that cannot be bargained with. A lone object older than our species, older than our planet, perhaps older than life itself in our corner of the universe. As the black hole moved toward the inner solar system, the distortions in space would become undeniable. The familiar constellations would stretch and bend. Distant stars would smear into arcs of light as their rays were drawn along warped paths. Even without a telescope, people might notice something strange in the skies. That Orion appears wounded, that the Big Dipper seems to lean, that certain bright stars flicker in ways that feel unnatural. News would break worldwide. Astronomers would appear on broadcast networks. Their voices calm, but their eyes unable to hide the truth. Something with tremendous weight is arriving, something no one fully understands. Citizens would ask the most human question of all: what can we do? The answer would be heartbreakingly simple. We can watch. We can measure. We can hope that the visitor passes just far enough away that it leaves our fragile world standing. The first violent changes would not strike Earth directly. They would begin with the gas giants. Jupiter would feel the gravitational tide pulling unevenly on its vast layers. Storms larger than our planet would twist into new and chaotic patterns. Saturn's glorious rings would tremble as ice fragments collide and scatter into unfamiliar arcs. The outer planets would shift in their stations like soldiers losing formation. Meanwhile, comets from the distant edges of the solar system would be set free. Objects that have not been disturbed since the formation of the Sun would begin their long and deadly journeys inward. Many would miss us. A few would not. The sky would grow violent with falling fire long before the black hole itself arrived. Eventually, the Moon would no longer follow its perfect dance with Earth. Its orbit would stretch. Tides would grow monstrous. Coastlines would see flooding that does not recede. Cities built along shores would face the first proofs that the laws of nature are changing around us. Seismologists would notice earthquakes becoming more frequent as the crust responds to shifting forces. Volcanoes that have slept since the rise of human civilization might awaken. The molten interior of Earth would churn unevenly as gravity tugs stronger on one side of the planet than the other. The world beneath our feet would lose its quiet stability. Yet the black hole would still be invisible. It would still hide behind the warping of the sky, its presence known only through the panic of numbers and the trembling of worlds. Humanity would stare into the night, wondering where the monster is, wondering when it will finally reveal itself. Eventually, it would. Not as a blazing object, but as a region of impossible darkness. A circle of nothing that swallows even starlight. Around its edges, a thin ring of brightness might appear, the intensely lensed glow of background stars skimming the edge of oblivion. Observers would call it the Eye of Death, a wound in the universe, a reminder that some places cannot be visited or claimed. They simply exist as endings. Every telescope on Earth would lock onto that dark circle, and every expert would be forced to say the words no one wants to speak. There is no chance to deflect it, no way to alter its course. A black hole is not a spacecraft. It does not respond to radiation pressure. It does not react to gravity the way ordinary things do. It is gravity itself concentrated into a traveling catastrophe. And even then, the worst would remain ahead of us, because the true destruction would come not from the black hole touching Earth, but from the violent tides its gravity would unleash long before it arrives. Planetary orbits would unravel. The moon could be torn apart. The oceans might rise to swallow continents. The very crust of Earth could buckle and break. Humanity would face the ultimate truth of cosmic existence. We are not protected. We are not special. We are inhabitants of a universe that is beautiful but merciless. A universe where a single object no larger than a city could erase everything that history has built. Yet within that terror lies a strange sense of awe. Black holes are the final expressions of gravity. Survival does not concern them. Destruction is not their purpose. They are simply the result of nature pushed to its limit. They teach us humility by showing us that the universe owes us nothing. As the shadow draws near, the last illusions fall away. We understand at last that space is not empty. It is alive with unseen forces. It harbors ancient travelers that move without sound and without light. And now, one of them is coming for us. The first signs of the approaching black hole would not be earthquakes or tidal waves. They would not be falling stars or darkness swallowing the sky. The earliest warning would arrive from light itself. In the emptiness between the worlds, light usually travels straight and predictable. Stars remain pinned to their places. Constellations form maps that sailors once trusted with their lives. But gravity does not simply pull on planets and moons. It pulls on the path that light follows. When a black hole nears, space curves around it, and light obeys that curve with absolute loyalty. At first, the bending of starlight would be too delicate for the unaided eye. Sensitive telescopes might notice that a well-known star does not quite align with its usual neighbors. It would appear to drift or smear a little. Then another star, then an entire line of them. Astronomers would point instruments at the region again and again. They would clean lenses and update software. They would wonder if something in the equipment was failing. But the distortions would continue and grow more pronounced. A perfect cosmic backdrop that had always given humanity a sense of direction would begin to behave like a reflection in rippling water. The black hole itself would remain invisible. There would be no jet of fire or swirl of glowing gas. A lone black hole that travels without feeding leaves, no signature except the way its gravity sculpts the universe around it. It would behave like a predator hidden in tall grass. You do not see the creature. You see only the movement in the field that tells you something is there. As the distance shrinks, the warping of starlight becomes dramatic. The night sky would twist as though space were being pulled inward by a giant hand. Whole constellations might appear to squeeze together in one narrow region. Stars behind the black hole would be magnified like dots of light seen through a lens. This effect is called gravitational lensing. It is not illusion, it is geometry. Light always travels straight, but space itself is no longer straight. It bends like melted glass, and light flows along the bends. For someone watching the sky without understanding why, the effect would be terrifying. It would appear that the heavens are leaning inward to some invisible point, a hole carved in the night. a region where stars are dragged to their doom. But stars are not falling. Only their light is being bent along new paths. The black hole could be tens of billions of kilometers away and still control the sky above Earth. Then another strange sight would emerge. When an object travels at a significant fraction of the speed of light, something called relativistic aberration dominates what observers see. Light from ahead is squeezed forward. Light from behind is stretched. The black hole would seem to race faster than light across the view of telescopes, even though no object can exceed the speed of light. It is simply that space itself is distorted in such a way that the human mind cannot make sense of the motion. Distances seem to shrink in front of something moving that fast. Angles collapse. All perspective becomes broken. Astronomers would try to explain it calmly. They would mention Einstein. They would mention the curvature of space-time. But the truth is that there are moments when the universe reveals its rules in ways that feel more like nightmares than equations. The black hole would be one such moment. Space would appear to scream silently, even though sound cannot travel there. The message would be clear. Something enormous has entered our territory. Something ancient. Something unstoppable. Every day would bring new distortions. The patterns that once guided early farmers and travelers would become unreliable. The North Star might appear to shudder or drift. Long familiar sky maps would no longer match what the eyes see. One by one, the fixed points of navigation that human culture once depended on would become unstable. The sky would feel sick. The cosmos would no longer serve as a symbol of constancy. Some people might refuse to believe the warnings. They would look upward and say that the stars still shine. They would argue that nothing has changed. But the truth would be written in every photon arriving from distant suns. The truth would be that a wandering singularity is bending the universe around itself as easily as a blacksmith bends iron. The human eye might take longer to accept what the instruments have already known, but eventually, even casual stargazers would sense the distortion. They would feel a strange dread without understanding why. When the constellations look wrong, when the sky itself seems wounded, the human heart cannot pretend that everything is all right. The closer the black hole comes, the more dramatic the effect becomes. At last, its presence becomes visible, not because it glows, but because it devours light. A small circle of absolute blackness appears in the cosmic tapestry. It is deeper than any shadow. It is not the absence of starlight. It is the place where starlight enters and never returns. Around that dark circle, the lensed light may form a thin and eerie ring. It would look like a halo drawn by the universe around its own destruction. People would gather on rooftops and fields. They would stare in silence at the unnatural blemish in the sky. They would ask if that is the thing scientists had warned them about. They would ask if the world is ending. And there would be no comforting answer, because what bends light so violently will soon bend everything else. Light would continue bending more sharply each hour that passes. Telescopes designed to map galaxies would struggle to lock onto reference points. Observers would watch starfields twist as though some invisible whirlpool is pulling the night sky into itself. The illusion would grow stronger until it feels like all directions now lead toward one hungry point in space. Even though Earth is still distant from the black hole, the lensing would give the impression that it is already close enough to swallow the world. Relativistic speed adds a stranger layer to the scene. When a massive object approaches at a speed close to that of light itself, the fabric of space ahead of it appears squeezed. Time slows in the direction of motion. The black hole would seem to ride on a wave of warped reality, compressing everything in front like a bow pushing against the surface of an ocean. The light from stars behind us would appear to drift into new shapes. It would look like space is flowing, not static, like the sky has become liquid. Scientists would try to warn the world in simple language that what we see is not motion of the stars themselves. It is the motion of the black hole, distorting the routes that photons must travel. Most of the public would understand only the fear in the scientists' voices. They would speak of general relativity, but the message underneath would be plain. A cosmic predator is coming closer, and the universe itself is howling the alarm. Soon, the circle of darkness grows sharper in view. It would look at first like a tiny flaw in the smooth field of night, as if a portion of the sky forgot to shine. That dark patch is not a shadow. A shadow is cast by something blocking light. This is far more disturbing. It is a place where light is asked to outrun gravity and fails every time. Nothing that enters that region can ever return. Not matter, not radiation, not hope. Around that absolute night, the lensing would form what astronomers call the photon ring, a delicate halo of stolen starlight. It would shimmer and drift slightly as the black hole races through the cosmos. To the human mind, it might resemble a staring eye, rimmed with fire but empty at its heart. People would watch it from city balconies and remote deserts and ship decks far from land. They would not need scientific training to understand that something deeply wrong has entered our skies. Even those who refuse to believe in danger would feel a change inside their own biology. Humans evolved under a predictable canopy of stars. Our minds anchor themselves to stable horizons. When the stars tilt and bend in ways no brain expects, instinct speaks. It whispers that predators are near, that shelter is needed, that this night is different. The distortions would not stay subtle. Near the black hole, light can take multiple paths to reach an observer. Some rays would loop halfway around the object before reaching us. Others would travel what appears to be the straightest path, but still arrive curved. The result is a terrifying mirage. Distant stars would appear duplicated or smeared into long curves. A single bright point could seem to split into three. Some stars might disappear entirely behind the event horizon and reappear on the opposite side, as if popping out from nothingness. Imagine looking into a mirror that shows your reflection stretched into impossible shapes. The universe is holding up that mirror now, and Earth is inside its frame. Navigators would lose the sky. Ships that once used the stars for direction would drift off course. Pilots, guided by celestial positions, would find their instruments defying logic. Space agencies tracking spacecraft near distant planets would report positions that change without physical cause. Every attempt to predict the sky would fail as the visitor redraws the rules. Then another, unreal sight would emerge. The black hole is moving so fast that the light from ahead is gathered into a concentrated brightening called relativistic beaming. The region in front of the black hole would seem to glow with stolen starlight. Behind it, a dark wake would form where countless rays are dragged off their old routes. Not only does the black hole eat light that tries to escape, it also starves the space behind it of light that once streamed freely. A cone of darkness would stretch outward as though it is scraping brightness from the cosmos. To someone without training, this might appear as the sky tearing open behind an invisible blade. Fear would spread faster than facts. Misinterpretations and stories would fill every corner of the world. Some would claim it is a sign or a weapon or the opening of a gate. But reality is both simpler and more merciless. A collapsed star is entering our system, and light is screaming warnings across the heavens because that is all it can do. As people watch the misshapen constellations, they would begin to feel that the whole of space is leaning over us, that the universe is no longer the calm stage upon which Earth lives its small dramas. Instead, the stage itself is alive with threat. The visitor still has not reached the inner planets, yet already the sky has become a frantic conversation between gravity and light, both struggling to tell us the same truth. The predator is close. The strangest illusion would come when the black hole is near enough that its gravity and its motion work together to produce something observers would swear violates the laws of nature. The black hole might appear to move faster than light across the stars. It would seem to leap from one position to another in the sky almost instantly. The human eye and brain would insist that nothing can travel so quickly. that this must be a trick. Yet the explanation lies in the delayed arrival of light carrying information to us. The black hole bends that light so sharply that our senses lose the ability to judge distance or speed. Our rules fail, our instincts protest. But the universe continues without concern. Imagine watching a mountain sprint across a horizon like a living beast. That is what this vision would feel like. A massive object, invisible at its center, yet wrapped in a halo of tortured starlight, sprinting toward our sun faster than any comet or asteroid ever dared. It is in that moment that humanity would finally feel the scale of the threat. We are not dealing with a celestial visitor. We are standing in the path of a moving singularity. The first waves of panic would ripple through cities. People would gather in open spaces at night, staring upward until their eyes burned. Parents would tell their children to stay indoors, even though the danger is still far above them. Scientists would hold emergency meetings through sleepless nights. Governments would demand answers. But no answer would contain comfort, because the laws of nature are clear and without mercy. Civilization has always believed that disasters come from the surface below or the atmosphere above. Storms, floods, earthquakes, diseases, none of those forces compare to a roaming black hole. Natural disasters end when the energy is spent, but gravity does not exhaust itself. It only grows stronger with closeness. Even when the black hole is still many billions of kilometers away, its influence whispers into our world. Satellite orbits would drift unpredictably. Signals might bend as they cross the distorted regions of space-time. Global positioning systems would lose their reliability. A pilot could look at instruments showing one location while the ground reveals another. Small errors at first, then larger, then catastrophic. The skies would be a theater of bending light, and the ground below would begin to feel the shifting tides of gravity. Earth's oceans respond to the pull of our moon. The moon itself is held by the sun. Add a new massive object into that delicate dance, and everything begins to wobble. The tides would not arrive when expected. They would surge higher than predicted. Storm barriers designed for protection would be overwhelmed not by wind, but by strange gravitational tides that no model had anticipated. In remote places where the sky is darkest, people would notice the change most vividly. They would see the stars split into arcs that seemed to chase one another. A bright star might appear to slide toward the black heart in the sky like a moth to a flame. The more the black hole closes in, the more the universe will appear to funnel itself toward it, as if creation is preparing to be consumed. Animals would react before humans fully grasp the truth. Birds would migrate in confused directions. Herds would scatter and regroup nervously. Creatures that depend on the fixed direction of starlight for navigation would lose their sense of where to go. Nature depends on stability. Light has always pointed the way. When the stars lose their rules, instinct struggles to follow. Then comes the most haunting moment. The black hole enters a region where its effect on light becomes strong enough that even ordinary observers can detect the motion of wandering shadows in the sky. A moving circle of absolute night that does not behave like an eclipse and does not obey the sun. It crawls with dreadful certainty, not across our daylight, but across the entire universe above. It is not a moon. It is not a planet. It is the absence of space. A traveling hole in the cosmos that calls every beam of light toward it. Children would ask what it is. Some adults would refuse to answer. Others would say that scientists are watching it closely, as though that watchfulness could protect anyone. But inside observatories, experts would know the outcome is approaching faster than anyone can admit in public. Every hour is worse than the last. The visitor is accelerating its destruction without ever changing speed, simply because gravity is a language spoken by distance. The closer the black hole comes, the louder its voice grows. And space answers that voice by bending, by screaming through distorted starlight, that something mighty approaches. The sky would be unrecognizable by this stage. Constellations that guided ancient wanderers would look like broken skeletons of their former shapes. Astronomy books would become artifacts of a lost cosmic order. The very sky that gave humanity a sense of belonging in the universe would turn into a warning sign written in madness. By this point, anyone who looks up might feel as though the universe itself is falling. It is not falling, it is being reshaped. The visitor has finally announced its presence fully. It has entered our domain of light. Soon, it will enter our domain of gravity. And when that happens, Earth will no longer simply watch. Earth will fall. Long before the black hole enters the inner solar system, long before the moon tears or oceans rise into continents, the first true wounds appear in the paths that planets follow. Gravity is a contract that holds the worlds in place. For billions of years, Earth has obeyed the gentle pull of the sun. The orbit is almost a perfect circle, neither too close nor too far, allowing oceans to remain liquid and life to flourish. But this balance is delicate. It relies on nothing more than distance and mass. When a new mass arrives, especially one heavier than many suns and moving faster than imagination normally allows, the contract shreds. The earliest signs would come not from the ground, but from the mathematics of motion. Astronomers would notice that the outer planets are drifting slightly from their predicted positions. Neptune would complete its travels a little slower than expected. Uranus would wander just a little farther from the Sun. At first, these changes would appear so tiny that only the most precise instruments could detect them. Yet precision is exactly what keeps our species aware of what lurks in the cosmos. As days turn into weeks, the deviations grow. Saturn's path begins to stretch into a longer ellipse. Jupiter starts to speed up in one part of its orbit and slow down in another. Even the asteroid belt would show signs of agitation. Small, rocky bodies that have followed the same lanes for ages would start to cross one another's paths. Some begin to fall inward toward the terrestrial planets. Others are flung outward into the darkness between the stars. Scientists would try to adjust their models again and again. They would account for every known object. Still, the numbers would not align. There is only one explanation that can correct the missing piece in the equations. A massive intruder is approaching, and its invisible hand is already pulling. Earth would not remain untouched for long. The shift would be subtle in the beginning. A year might lengthen by a few heartbeats. Seasons could creep slightly from their usual timing. Winter air might cling longer. Summers may arrive early. No one would think of gravity when flowers bloom before they should. People blame the weather. They always have. But soon, the tides would betray the truth. The moon has guided the oceans for as long as there have been oceans to move. Its pull has been soft, steady, and steadying. Now an unseen force competes for control. High tides would creep higher and refuse to fall as low as before. Coastal communities would experience flooding, not from storms or rain, but from the quiet rise of the sea itself. The water would come in like a thief without wind or thunder, yet it would not leave easily. Engineers studying dams and seawalls would shake their heads. Their designs are precise. Their calculations are sound. Yet the ocean grows more confident, as if the moon itself is being manipulated by something stronger. Even the rotation of the Earth could change. Our planet spins like a top on a smooth table, stabilized by the moon's companionship. But as the moon begins to wobble in its orbit, the top wavers. Days might stretch by fractions that clocks can detect, even if people cannot feel the difference in their bones. The change is faint, but real. Time itself begins to lose its steady beat. Space agencies would detect communication interruptions. Satellites might drift away from their intended stations. Tiny thrusters would fire constantly in artificial attempts to keep them on course. But fuel supplies are finite, and gravity does not negotiate. When the black hole pulls, nothing remains where it once belonged. Far away from Earth, the Kuiper Belt becomes a battlefield. Pluto and its icy neighbors feel the shift. Their ancient frozen tranquility collapses into chaos. Orbits veer. Some icy bodies are drawn inward. Others are thrown outward into lonely exile. Comets that have not seen the sun's light since Earth was young now find new trajectories. They begin slow arcs toward the inner planets. Years' worth of cosmic ammunition silently reloads. Meanwhile, the gravitational tension between Earth and the Sun becomes uneven. On the side facing the black hole, our planet feels a stronger tug. On the opposite side, the pull is weaker. The crust reacts like the shell of a stressed egg, tightening and groaning under forces it never evolved to withstand. Deep beneath the continents, molten rock stirs in agitation. Volcanoes sense the coming violence before the people living near them notice even the slightest tremor. Humanity has always believed that disasters begin with dramatic signs. But this one starts quietly, a shift in a planet's path, a tide that lingers too long, a slight warping of time that whispers through atomic clocks. The greatest threats begin silently. The universe does not shout, it bends. Farmers might plant crops only to find seasons no longer align with the traditions of generations. Migrating animals lose the invisible trails mapped by instinct. Weather patterns become less predictable as Earth's position in the sun's warmth fluctuates. Storms would grow stranger. Heat waves arrive where cool winds once ruled. Snow might fall where flowers once opened easily every spring. Every change would be linked to a coming gravitational storm. Astronomers everywhere would send alerts that become harder to ignore. They would announce that a stellar mass black hole, a collapsed star several times heavier than our Sun, is passing through our region of the galaxy. They would estimate that even without collision, even without slow capture, even without direct contact, the gravitational tides alone could end the conditions that allow life on Earth. People would ask if there is anything to be done. Could rockets nudge Earth into a safer orbit? Could nuclear devices somehow push against destiny? Could humanity rise to the occasion like in heroic stories? Those who understand the true scale would answer with quiet honesty. There is no engine strong enough to move a planet. There is no science that can command gravity of this magnitude. We can only observe. We can only prepare. We can only try to understand. But we cannot stop what is coming. Because space has decided to remind us how small we are. Earth would feel the approach more personally with each passing day. The smooth path that once carried our planet around the sun like a stone in a bound sling would warp into a stretched ellipse. Sometimes Earth would drift slightly closer to the sun, bathing continents in heat that arrives too early or too fiercely. Other times we would slide farther away, letting cold breathe over lands that should be warm. Life depends on the delicate balance between those two extremes. Even a small disruption begins to unravel the long chain of conditions that keeps our world alive. People would argue that the changes are temporary. They would hope that next season the weather will return to normal. But nature would not obey hope. As the orbit grows more erratic, the climate loses its pattern. Some regions would experience rains that do not stop. Others would dry into cracked plains under sunlight that feels merciless. The animals and plants that depend on predictable cycles would begin to fail in silence. The moon would sense the danger more clearly than anyone on Earth. The moon does not have an atmosphere or oceans that soften the effects of change. Its orbit would stretch into a shape that looks like a teardrop around Earth. When it swings close, tides surge with unnatural intensity. When it swings far, they collapse into unusual stillness. The moon has always acted as a stabilizer for our world. Once that stability falters, Earth becomes vulnerable to violent tilting of its axis. That tilt controls our seasons. If gravity twists it even slightly, the entire planet feels the consequences in every forest, every glacier, every heartbeat. On the oceans, strange waves begin to appear, not driven by wind, not driven by storms, They rise because the black hole's gravity pulls more strongly on the side of Earth that faces it. Water climbs upward as though obeying a command that comes from the stars. On the other side of Earth, the ocean sinks away from the land, leaving bays and seafloors exposed only briefly before surging back in confused rhythm. Fishermen would find familiar tides replaced by chaos, as if the sea can no longer remember how to breathe. Seismologists would detect odd vibrations beneath the crust. The rocky plates that float on molten mantle would feel uneven forces tugging at them. Minor earthquakes would become common in places that once slept peacefully. Great mountain ranges built over millions of years might shift by thicknesses too small for the eye, yet large enough for instruments to notice. The planet is already protesting the new alignment of gravitational power. Astronomers would release models showing that if the black hole continues on its current path, Earth may not remain in orbit around the Sun. A near miss could fling our world outward into the void between stars. A slightly different trajectory could pull us inward closer to the Sun, where temperatures climb high enough to boil the oceans. Even a survival scenario leaves us forever changed. The black hole is not attempting to destroy us. It simply goes where gravity leads. We are the ones caught in the path. Cities would respond to the growing awareness with fear and confusion. Governments would try to maintain calm. They would speak of contingency plans and space programs and international cooperation. But no alliance of nations can change the shape of the universe. Satellites would lose their stability faster now. Navigation systems stumble. Telecommunications become unreliable. Planes adjusting for distorted signals may be forced to ground themselves permanently. The black hole would still be outside the orbit of Jupiter. Yet already it commands every motion in the solar system like a silent conductor standing behind the orchestra. Earth's orbit becomes a question with no clear answer. Computers might produce dozens of predictions. Some end with Earth drifting into open space. Some show us captured by the black hole and hurled away with unimaginable speed. A few show our world flung into a new distant orbit around our own sun, cold and dying. None show the life we know continuing. Cultures that once celebrated the stars would now fear them. Telescopes would show the distortion growing larger each night like a bruise spreading through the sky. Young people who once dreamed of exploring space would now watch it turn against them. The universe is vast, and we are delicate. The lesson is harsh, but true. Life is a local miracle, not a universal guarantee. Every scientist who studies the black hole would arrive at the same conclusion. Although it has not reached us physically, it has already entered our gravitational territory. We are within its influence. The pull strengthens every hour. The changes accelerate. There is no return to the stability Earth once knew. The black hole is still distant, but its presence has become undeniable. Soon the Moon will face the full force of this encounter. And when that happens, Earth will no longer be dealing with subtle shifts. It will be dealing with destruction that no ocean, mountain, or continent can withstand. The Moon would soon reach the point where gentle gravitational guidance shatters into violence. For billions of years, it has circled Earth at a distance that keeps our tides alive and our axis steady. Now, the changing forces begin to treat our Moon like a toy caught between two giants. The black hole pulls harder with each passing moment. The Sun pulls in another direction. Earth tries to hold on. That balance begins to twist into something unstable. As the Moon stretches into a more elongated path, every nearest approach begins to take a toll. Tidal forces are not merely about oceans. They act on solid rock as well. The Moon's surface is covered with scars formed by impacts and ancient lava flows. Yet beneath that silent exterior, new stresses awaken. Imagine grabbing a stone and pulling it from both ends. Eventually, even a stone will crack. The Moon feels that strain all at once across its entire body. Lunar orbiters would detect rumblings. Moonquakes would rattle its fractured crust repeatedly. The once tranquil lunar surface would begin to shift. Dust that had settled for countless ages would lift in tiny clouds as the ground heaves in slow motion. The moon is being pulled apart bit by bit. Back on Earth, the consequences intensify. Ocean tides begin to reach heights that were once unthinkable. Coastlines that used to handle storms once a decade now drown underwater every week. Rivers reverse temporarily as seawater pushes inland. Salt floods into farmlands. Ports become unusable as docks are repeatedly swallowed. Entire coastal regions would debate evacuation not because of storms, but because of the rhythm of cosmic gravity. Meanwhile, the moon's weakened orbit could begin to drift outward unexpectedly. Earth has always given some of its rotational energy to the moon, pushing it slowly farther away. Now, with the black hole involved, that exchange becomes chaotic. The moon might suddenly rush outward beyond any stable orbit, or it might plunge inward, pulled by tides that become savage. It could spiral close enough that its gravity rips at Earth's crust with deadly intensity. Either direction holds destruction. Scientists would realize that Earth's fate depends on what happens to the moon. If the moon tears apart, its fragments could form a ring around Earth like Saturn's, but composed of enormous boulders falling into new paths. Those fragments would not remain in orbit peacefully. They would rain down on Earth in endless impacts. Skies would burn night after night. The oceans would boil where rocks plunged with speed faster than meteors. The moon was never meant to endure such forces. As the black hole continues forward, there is a moment when the moon crosses the threshold at which gravity no longer holds it together. The stress becomes stronger than the forces binding its interior. A massive crack forms, then another, and another. The sound would not reach Earth because space does not allow sound to travel. But through telescopes, humanity watches its closest companion split into colossal pieces. Fragments scatter like glowing embers flung from a broken lantern. Some spin away into new orbits around Earth. Some collapse inward toward us. The breakup is not gentle, it is total. A great cloud forms where once a single sphere shined. That cloud becomes a ring lit by sunlight, a glittering band of destruction circling our planet. Within days, the bombardment begins. Meteor storms pound the atmosphere without pause. Fire streaks across every horizon. Craters form faster than they can be counted. Dust rises to choke the skies, turning daylight into a dim twilight. Oceans respond with towering waves whenever a large piece finds land or sea. Humans would watch from every continent as the familiar face of the moon becomes a memory replaced by a halo of terror. None of it happens because the black hole wants anything. It does not choose. It merely passes. But the moon could not survive the attention of something so massive. And Earth, in losing its stabilizing companion, becomes even more vulnerable to the next stage of gravitational assault. The solar system once felt like a place built for life, a cozy corner of a spiral galaxy where conditions stayed calm enough for water, weather, forests, and mines, capable of looking up at the stars. But now the same stars tell a different story. We are not protected by distance or by luck. We live in a universe full of silent travelers that do not see us at all. After the moon falls apart, Earth's orbit continues to stretch. Our seasons become wild guesses. Nights barely recover from the bombardments. The crust beneath our feet grows restless. Volcanic fire brews in places that once slept. The atmosphere strains against forces trying to peel it away. The moon's destruction is not the end. It is the warning. Gravity has only begun to show its full strength. The moon has always been our guardian, a silent companion that steadies our planet as it spins through the darkness. From the first spark of life rising out of ancient seas, its gravity has shaped the tides that nourish coasts and guided early creatures from water to land. The moon glows in the night like a gentle clock that marks the passing of months and seasons. For humans, it has inspired wonder, myth, romance, and the first steps toward understanding the heavens. Yet beneath its beauty, the moon is simply a world that survives because the forces acting upon it remain balanced. And now that balance is collapsing. As the black hole draws closer, the moon becomes a battleground between three titans. One pull comes from our Earth that has always kept the moon near. Another pull comes from the sun, distant but massive enough to tug the moon along as Earth orbits. The final and most terrifying pull comes from the approaching singularity. Its gravity strengthens relentlessly. It does not pulse. It does not weaken. It grows stronger every moment because distance is shrinking every moment. The moon begins to stretch from the inside. When gravity is uneven across a sphere, one side is yanked harder than the other. This difference is called a tidal force. On Earth, tides move the oceans. On the moon, they tear at stone. Deep inside, the lunar mantle strains like metal heated and cooled too quickly. Fault lines extend, caverns collapse. Ancient features shift that have been frozen in silence for longer than life has existed on land. Observatories on Earth would notice subtle changes first. The moon's orbit becomes lopsided. Sometimes it drifts closer, looming larger in the sky. Sometimes it swings farther away, shrinking to a distant pale coin. During close passes, the gravitational pull on Earth intensifies. Tides rise beyond prediction. The sea surges inland, swallowing beaches and ports even when there is no storm. Floodwaters linger without retreat. Coastal cities fight a losing battle against an ocean that no longer listens to the moon as it once did. Because the moon itself is no longer listening to Earth. As hours pass, these changes grow harsher. Moonquakes rattle craters that once seemed eternal. Mountain peaks crumble into dusty avalanches. The surface fractures into enormous cracks, some stretching hundreds of kilometers. Lunar dust rises into plumes that hover briefly before settling again in strange new patterns. A world that has slept for eons is awakening into chaos. The moon tries to hold together, but the forces continue to increase. There comes a moment, inevitable from the first sign of the black hole, when being a single world is no longer possible. The gravitational difference between the near side and far side becomes too extreme. The rocks and minerals that bind the moon cannot resist. The crust splits wide. A shockwave races through the interior faster than any earthquake in human records. The moon begins to break apart. From Earth, people would witness one of the most horrifying and awe-inspiring sights in the history of our sky. A glowing fissure slices across the lunar face. More cracks branch outward, like black lightning frozen in view. Segments of the moon shift, tearing from one another. The place that once reflected peaceful silver light now becomes a disintegrating relic of cosmic violence. There is no sound reaching us. Space does not carry sound. But the silence only makes the destruction feel more unreal. A companion that witnessed our planet's birth is dying without a whisper. Large fragments separate, drifting into new paths that loop around Earth. Smaller pieces swirl in a chaotic cloud that catches sunlight and sparkles like broken glass. Within days, the moon is no longer a sphere, but a ring of debris stretching around the planet. That ring widens. Chunks collide and shatter further. Some fragments slam into each other at speeds faster than bullets, throwing bright flashes that flicker across the night like fireflies of disaster. Earth is now wrapped in a circle of danger. Gravity pulls constantly on the debris. Piece by piece, fragments fall inward. The atmosphere glows red from friction as rocks burn into meteors. At first, the night sky fills with streaks of orange light, beautiful yet terrifying. People gather outside and watch, not realizing that this is only the beginning and that the falling pieces will soon grow too large to burn away harmlessly. The bombardment turns severe. Car-sized fragments crash into oceans, sending walls of water racing outward. House-sized pieces fall into forests and deserts, igniting fires that burn uncontrolled. And even larger fragments arrive, some a kilometer across, striking with the power to erase entire regions. The ground shakes. Cities shatter. Smoke rises into a sky already dimmed by dust. None of these impacts are random. They are the final gifts of a moon that could no longer withstand the black hole's command. Without the moon's steadying influence, Earth's tilt begins to wobble. The axis that kept our seasons regulated becomes unstable. Winter might strike the tropics while heat scorches polar lands. Storms form from confused winds and unleash destruction far beyond the strength of ordinary hurricanes. Lightning storms rage for days at a time. The planet's ecosystem struggles to understand how to exist without the timing the moon once provided. Humanity would cling to hope that the worst has passed now that the moon has fallen. But the black hole is still coming. It is still accelerating our crisis. And the collapse of the moon was only the first major victim of the gravitational tidal onslaught. Earth itself is next. The continents would feel the consequences of the moon's destruction with every heartbeat. Without the moon's steady pull, tides do not simply rise and fall, they thrash. Water climbs inland in irregular surges that no coastal defense can predict. Shores become flooded for days at a time before draining suddenly, leaving behind wreckage and salt-soaked earth. People who once trusted tide charts now watch waves behave like creatures possessed. The weight of those shifting oceans places stress on Earth's crust. The plates begin to slip more often. Fault lines awaken. Earthquakes strike with increasing frequency and intensity, rattling cities that have never known such violence. Buildings sway. Bridges crack. The ground heaves like a restless animal. The deep interior of Earth, where molten rock churns, begins to move in strange patterns. Mantle plumes rise faster. Volcanic chambers swell under new pressure. Volcanoes that have slept since early human civilization now send out warning signals. Gas vents expand. Ground temperatures rise. Some eruptions begin quietly as clouds of ash carried on the wind. Others explode without warning, tearing open mountains that stood as guardians for thousands of years. The sky grows darker, not only from falling lunar dust, but now from ash that blocks sunlight. Daylight becomes a faint and ghostly glow, filtered through a bruised atmosphere. Rivers overflow as rain patterns lose their ancient rhythm. Snow falls where flowers once opened. Deserts receive downpours that flood dry valleys in a matter of hours. Forests become swamps. Fields that once fed millions turn into lakes. Farmers look upward and wonder if the sky has forgotten its purpose. Meanwhile, some regions become parched wastelands. Areas that once relied on predictable rainy seasons watch clouds drift away, torn by unpredictable winds. Crops wither in fields. Animals wander in confusion. The old maps of climate no longer apply. Seasons collide. Patterns die. The stability that life depends on fades under invisible forces. Earth's axis itself begins to tremble. The tilt that brings summer and winter has always been guided by the moon's steady presence. Now it quivers like an unbalanced spinning top. That instability affects weather on a planetary scale. Tropical heat may swing northward without warning. Arctic cold could fall across equatorial lands. Every living creature, from insects in jungles to fish in coral reefs, finds itself in a world that no longer behaves according to memory. Atmospheric scientists would warn that storms are gaining power due to temperature imbalances. Supercells form across oceans and roar toward shores without pattern or mercy. Entire coastlines brace for winds that scream louder than any hurricane in recorded history. Lightning becomes a constant flicker across the horizon. Tornadoes appear in places that never feared them before. Weather, once a mundane part of life, becomes a relentless force of chaos. As the bombardment of moon fragments continues, the dust and ash in the air thicken. Sunlight dims. A permanent twilight begins to settle over much of Earth. Plants starve for light. Forests that once thrived become skeletal landscapes as leaves turn pale and drop early from branches. Food chains strain as herbivores struggle to feed. Predators grow desperate when prey vanishes. Ecosystems collapse not with a single blow, but in slow suffering. And still, beneath the fear on the surface, something deeper stirs. Pressure builds within Earth's mantle. Magma seeks pathways upward. The gravitational pull of the black hole stretches our planet just as it stretched the moon. Rock responds like clay under uneven force. Rifts widen, mountains shift. Entire regions may fracture in ways geologists never expected. Human beings would try to adapt. They would relocate from coasts to higher ground. They would build shelters against falling debris. They would attempt to grow food under artificial lights. But no matter how clever or resilient, humanity cannot reverse gravity. The oceans continue to rise and fall without pattern. The land continues to shake. The skies continue to darken. What once was a thriving planet now feels like a wounded animal, lashing out under invisible torment. Earth can endure many catastrophes. It has survived asteroid impacts and global ice ages and the birth and death of ancient supercontinents. But the black hole is a challenge unlike any other. It does not strike once and leave. It continues to tear at the planet with every step closer. Astronomers warn that this is still only the beginning. For all the torment already endured, the black hole has not yet reached its most destructive position relative to Earth. The tides will grow worse, the crust will scream louder. Every molecule of land, sea, and air will feel the deepening grip of an event no life on Earth has ever witnessed. Gravity controls everything, and this gravity does not belong to our sun. It belongs to the visiting singularity that sees planets and moons only as objects caught in its passing wake. Humanity would look at the night sky where the moon once hung, now replaced by a violent ring of shimmering debris. They would realize that even celestial companions can be ripped apart. They would realize that Earth, too, is vulnerable to the same fate. The crust beneath our feet is next in line. The destruction of the moon marks a boundary that humanity cannot retreat from. Once that ancient companion falls, Earth stands alone against a gravitational assault meant for no one but felt by everyone. The planet itself begins to deform under the shifting forces. Mountains that once seemed immovable tremble subtly at first, then more violently. Valleys stretch. Deep within the crust, minerals grind against each other, building pressure that must eventually find release. Beneath the oceans, tectonic plates drift in patterns that no geologist ever predicted. The black hole's pull draws more strongly on one hemisphere than the other, causing Earth to bulge in unnatural directions. Fault lines open under the sea floor, releasing columns of scalding water and volcanic gas. These underwater eruptions boil marine ecosystems. Coral forests collapse into graveyards of lifeless stone. The great blue expanses that once nurtured life now glow faintly with the heat of geological fury. Volcanoes on land join this violent chorus. Some erupt in towering fountains of ash and fire. Others ooze rivers of molten rock that carve paths through forests and towns. Clouds of ash travel the winds, settling across continents in layers thick enough to bury roads and fields. A grey veil spreads across the world, dimming the sun further and causing temperatures to decline, even as volcanic heat fights upward from below. The atmosphere becomes a battleground between fire and cold. People would awaken to a world they barely recognize. The sky appears bruised with dust. The air tastes metallic. The horizon flickers with fire in multiple directions. Earthquakes no longer surprise anyone. Buildings are reinforced again and again, only to fall with the next tremor. Families sleep in open fields for fear of roofs collapsing over them. But even the open ground cannot be trusted. Fissures split without warning, swallowing whatever stands too close. Roads twist and buckle. Rivers reroute. The lines humans once drew to organize civilization become useless. Emergency systems fail more frequently. Satellites knocked from stable orbits crash into the atmosphere or vanish into distant paths under the black hole's influence. Communication networks flicker or fall silent. Even electricity grows unreliable as power plants struggle against damaged infrastructure and endless natural disaster. Humanity has created wonders of engineering and science. but those wonders are fragile compared to the brute strength of gravity reshaping the world. Scientists attempt to model the future, but their predictions shift constantly. The black hole's trajectory changes slightly as it interacts with the sun and planets. Each adjustment brings new devastation. An orbit that becomes slightly more stretched today leads to a temperature swing that can starve millions tomorrow. The people who once looked to experts for certainty now receive only warnings carried in shaken voices. Eventually, the land itself begins to break. Some regions rise as the interior pushes upward. Other regions sink, creating vast depressions that fill with brown, debris-filled water. Entire coastlines transform into jagged cliffs. Plates grind with soundless fury as continents experience motions that normally take millions of years compressed into months or weeks. In certain places, magma forces its way through the crust in curtains of fire. Lava lakes form where cities once stood. Even calm landscapes become apocalyptic as ash thickens into darkness. The air grows heavy with sulfur and other gases that sting the lungs. Animals flee in panicked herds or collapse from exhaustion. Humans try to migrate away from danger, but danger now spreads faster than wheels or legs can outrun. Through all this violence, oceans continue to misbehave. They surge without reason, drowning lands already weakened by quakes. Tsunamis appear even when no meteor or wind should cause them. Some coastlines vanish permanently beneath rising seas, while others suddenly expand as water retreats and then returns with greater fury. Earth's water has become a weapon wielded by invisible hands. The deeper consequences remain unseen by ordinary eyes. The core of Earth, a sphere of molten iron that generates the magnetic field protecting life from the sun's radiation, begins to wobble. That magnetic field weakens. Auroras bloom far from the poles, a hauntingly beautiful sign that harmful particles from the sun are striking deeper into the atmosphere. Radiation levels rise. Electronic systems short out. Birds lose their ability to navigate by Earth's magnetic guidance. Another layer of stability peels away. Humanity would cling to hope because humans always do. They would gather in surviving shelters and share food and stories to fight the fear that presses from all sides. They would promise one another that the worst will soon be over, that things will improve, that the world has endured catastrophes before. But the truth hangs overhead like an open wound in the sky. The black hole has not yet reached its closest pass. The torment delivered so far is merely the warning. The destruction of the moon and the chaos within Earth's crust are preludes. The visitor has not stopped its approach. It continues forward, riding the momentum of a supernova's final thunder. Its gravity gains strength with every kilometer of space it swallows. Earth's crust is cracking. The core is stirring. And the atmosphere itself is about to be the next victim. Earth has always seemed strong beneath our feet. We trust the ground because it feels immovable. We build cities upon it. We tell ourselves that continents are steady and mountains eternal. Yet the apparent calm of Earth's crust hides a restless interior. The crust is only a thin shell floating upon a deep ocean of molten rock that churns slowly over ages. When a wandering black hole pulls unevenly on our planet, that hidden ocean responds with anger. The core remembers that it is fire. The mantle remembers that it can rise. The crust learns that stability was only a temporary gift. The first true break in the illusion arrives when enormous fault lines rupture without warning. The black hole's gravity stretches Earth so that one side feels a stronger pull than the other. It is as if the planet is being drawn into a question mark shape, twisted by a force that cares nothing for tectonic patience. Mountain ranges crack open. Plains buckle into ridges. Entire coastlines shift inward or outward as the planet reshapes itself according to gravity's new command. Earthquakes that once lasted seconds now roll for minutes. The ground behaves like a living thing writhing under unbearable pressure. Cities fall. Highways warp and snap. Skyscrapers designed to withstand the greatest known quakes collapse under forces that rewrite the rules. The crust no longer supports the world above. Streets open into chasms deep enough that their bottoms fade into molten glow. Subterranean caves erupt, pushing hot steam into the sky like breath from a giant waking with rage. People flee from the land they once trusted, but there is no direction safe from the shaking. Every continent sways, every ocean floor heaves upward or caves inward. Volcanoes become fierce voices of the mantle. Their eruptions no longer rare expressions of pressure release, but constant signals of a planet in distress. Lava fountains rise from cones that were quiet since ancient history. New vents open in unexpected places, such as green pastures and city suburbs, spilling bright molten rivers that melt roads and forests into smoking lesions on the landscape. Ash spreads through the sky like a dark memory that refuses to fade, blocking sunlight more completely each day. The temperature falls even as fire erupts from below. The oceans behave like wild beasts. Water sloshes violently, drawn toward the black hole when that side of Earth faces the approaching singularity. Then the Great Sea drains away again when the pull shifts. Coastal cities become victims of this cosmic tug-of-war. Some drown beneath relentless walls of water. Others are left stranded miles from any sea, their harbors now muddy plains where ships lie useless. The tides no longer know where to go. They are commanded only by the fluctuating gravitational war between black hole, sun, and Earth. Deep inside the planet, the core responds to the twisting. The inner core is a sphere of iron crushed into solidity by unimaginable pressure. Around it, the outer core is a swirling sea of molten metal that spins and generates Earth's magnetic shield. The black hole's arrival disturbs this ancient dance. The molten iron begins to move in unfamiliar patterns. Currents shift direction. The magnetic field weakens further. The invisible shield that once protected life from solar radiation becomes patchy and unreliable. Strange auroras appear in skies across every latitude, glowing in colors that feel unreal. The lights shimmer even above deserts and the equator. They are beautiful, but their beauty is a warning. Radiation from the sun is now punching deeper into the atmosphere. Electronics flicker and die. Power grids fail. The night sky looms with silent storms of charged particles. Nature is rewriting the conditions of survival. Weather joins the revolt. Massive pressure differences form as heat escapes through cracks in the crust and sunlight struggles to reach the surface. Storm systems that used to form over oceans now spin into gigantic spirals that stretch across entire continents. Winds roar with speeds that tear roofs away effortlessly. Lightning strikes in clusters that dance across the land like chains of fire. Rain pours in endless sheets or vanishes entirely for months. The balance of heat and cold that once made Earth a thriving cradle of life becomes chaotic and cruel. People search for meaning as the skies darken and the ground trembles. Some turn to ancient beliefs. Some look to science for guidance. But science can only measure the collapse that no human action can stop. The black hole is neither villain nor judge. It does not seek to punish. It simply moves, and gravity follows. Earth is caught in that wake like a leaf in a flood. Survivors gather in temporary shelters to escape falling debris and volcanic ash. They dig wells hoping to find clean water. They grow food under artificial light because the sun is now a dim ornament behind a curtain of dust and smoke. Languages, cultures, and technologies that once spanned continents shrink into pockets of effort and endurance. Humanity becomes a species that survives day to day. The dream of progress fades beneath the urgency of breath and shelter. Some regions of the world crack open so wide that entire lakes drain into the mantle. Steam erupts from the abyss as water meets fiery depths. New land rises from the seabed, as if the planet itself is redistributing its weight. Old maps lose their truth. Cartographers sketch new coastlines daily, only to find them already changed. Earth is no longer the planet recorded in textbooks. It is a shape-shifting world, answering gravity's ruthless call. The black hole has not yet reached its closest point. Everything that has happened is merely the prelude to a deeper wound. The event horizon remains distant, but its influence is unbearable already. Every minute brings greater strain. Every hour pushes the crust closer to total fracture. If Earth could speak, its voice would be a roar of fire and grinding stone. But space is silent. Earth suffers without sound. Humanity listens with fear to the tremors and eruptions, knowing that this torment is only a hint of what awaits. Because after the crust comes the air we breathe. Earth's air has always been the most fragile barrier between life and the vacuum of the universe. A thin film of gases held close by gravity gives us every breath, every breeze, every cloud. It filters sunlight so trees can feed and animals can live. It protects us from radiation that would otherwise burn the surface sterile. We rarely notice the atmosphere unless it misbehaves as storms or droughts. We forget that air is not guaranteed. It remains with us only because Earth is large enough and gravity strong enough to hold it. Now gravity itself is under siege. The approaching black hole pulls unevenly on the planet. One side of Earth feels a stronger tug. The other side feels that tug less. The molecules of air respond to that imbalance. Gas rises higher where the pull is strongest, stretching the atmosphere upward like a blanket being lifted too far. On the opposite side, the blanket sags. High-altitude winds tear into violent currents as the air attempts to redistribute itself. The atmosphere becomes unstable, swirling away from the planet's surface where gravity loosens its grip. Storm clouds tower taller than any ever seen. Their upper regions stretch into darkness, caught between Earth and the black hole. Lightning flashes inside them so often that the night sky pulses with ghostly light. Cyclones grow into whirlpools of air wider than entire countries. The wind does not simply blow, it screams. Buildings that survived earthquakes now fall to gales that strip roofs like leaves. Trees that took centuries to grow snap in a single gust. Dust and ash are swept into the upper layers of the sky and carried around the world. As the black hole moves closer still, the air itself begins to escape. Gas molecules climb beyond the height where Earth's gravity can fully reclaim them. The planet starts to bleed atmosphere into space. At first, the loss feels invisible. Only sensitive instruments detect the thinning. Then breathing becomes harder in high places. Then crops struggle to grow at elevations where they once thrived. Humans living on mountains descend to lower ground, searching for thicker air. But there is no safe place. The magnetic field that once protected the atmosphere from solar radiation has weakened. High-energy particles from the sun strike the upper layers of the atmosphere with relentless force. They break oxygen and nitrogen apart. The fragments rush outward, pushed by radiation pressure. With each hour, the sky loses more of its strength. Every sunset looks wrong. Instead of gentle reds and purples, the sky glows with eerie greens and blues as charged particles cascade in shimmering veils across the horizon. People watch the lights dance far beyond the poles. They call it beautiful because they do not know how else to describe something that terrifies them. Beauty can be the final mask of destruction. Rain no longer falls in familiar patterns. Some regions drown in never-ending downpours, driven by warm air rising violently into cold heights. Others dry into cracked wastelands, the moisture torn upward before it can touch the soil. Storms form out of calm skies without warning. Tornadoes rage for days. Hail the size of boulders crashes through rooftops and forests. Even breathing becomes dangerous. Ash from volcanoes mixes with fine dust from detonated crust and tiny shards of lunar debris. People wear cloths over their faces, then masks, then sealed helmets if they can find them. Air once taken for granted now becomes something that must be hunted, filtered, protected. Hospitals flood with people gasping for clean breaths. The oceans join this chaos. Their surface warms in some places and freezes in others. When water evaporates into the thinning air, storms gather moisture more quickly than ever before. Hurricanes expand into monstrous spirals that march across entire hemispheres. Waves strike coastlines with the strength of mountains. Salt water pushes inland where freshwater once flowed. Drinking water grows scarce not only from contamination, but from rising seas that taint rivers. Wildlife flees failing habitats. Birds collapse mid-flight as thin air starves their wings of lift. Fish swim blindly into strange currents driven by tides nothing understands anymore. Forest animals wander disoriented through ash and debris, seeking refuge that does not exist. The delicate balance of life collapses layer by layer as the air unravels. Humans once controlled the flow of air inside sealed rooms and domes. But now even those shelters cannot resist the vast leaks in the sky above. Pressure drops slowly but persistently. Weather balloons rise higher than ever before and never fall back. Some satellites capture haunting images of gases forming long streamers that stretch into space, pulled toward the invisible monster that closed in relentlessly. Scientists warn that if the black hole reaches a certain proximity, Earth could lose a significant portion of its atmosphere in a matter of weeks. Without air, fires would extinguish, breathing would cease. Oceans exposed to vacuum would boil from their surfaces. Plants would suffocate even if sunlight returned. The planet would become a barren rock wrapped in swirling debris. People on the ground feel the change even if they do not understand the physics. The sky feels thinner, the wind colder, the sun dimmer, the stars brighter. They look upward and see the dark circle surrounded by its impossible halo. They see the path of destruction stretching from that circle to the surface of their world. No one questions the danger anymore. No one dismisses the warnings. The entire planet has become witness to a force beyond control or negotiation. All of this chaos, every flood and quake and breathless gasp, has happened before the black hole reaches its closest point. It has not entered the inner orbit of Earth yet. It is still approaching, still tightening its grip, still preparing to unleash a final moment of devastation, unlike anything the planet has endured. Earth has lost its moon. Its crust rebelled. Its seas and sky turned against it. Now comes the moment when gravity reveals its most terrible lesson. A close pass. A second that lasts forever. The black hole does not creep into the inner solar system. It arrives like a final judgment carried by gravity alone. For so long it remained invisible, a dark wanderer without glow or voice. But when it draws near enough that distance collapses into danger, the universe finally shows its teeth. The black hole races past Earth at a speed so close to the speed of light that reality twists around it, like cloth pulled around a spinning blade. The moment of closest approach is brief. Humans measure time in heartbeats and breaths. Nature measures time in distortions of space-time. This encounter lasts less than a single second according to Earth's clocks. But for anyone near the zone where gravity intensifies sharply, that second stretches. Time slows near the event horizon. A falling raindrop may seem to hang motionless. A collapsing building might appear frozen in mid-fall. The world becomes a broken sequence of moments that refuse to align. The closer one is to the black hole, the slower time flows. The first sign of the encounter is not sound. Sound cannot travel through vacuum. Instead, light becomes panicked. From every horizon, the sky bends inward. Stars elongate into curved lines that seem to point toward a single dark circle overhead. The heavens begin to look like a whirlpool of starlight threatening to swallow the planet whole. The air grows cold as infrared energy escapes upward, pulled into a direction that no longer points straight above. Even radiation is confused. Gravity does not simply pull hard everywhere. It pulls harder in some places than others. This difference is the danger. The side of Earth facing the black hole is dragged more strongly. The far side is released slightly from the sun's familiar grip. That imbalance stretches the planet like a ball of clay yanked between two hands. Land rises and falls in terrible waves. Oceans surge upward as if attempting to flee the surface. The tallest mountains stretch skyward to dizzying heights, while valleys deepen into pits that groan beneath the pressure. Cities do not crumble because objects strike them. They crumble because the ground itself lengthens and contracts. Towers lean until steel wrenches apart. Bridges snap as anchor points shift by hundreds of meters within heartbeats. Skyscrapers twist into monstrous spirals before collapsing into clouds of dust and shattered stone. Roads stretch like pulled cords until pavement peels from the earth in long ribbons of broken rock. On the coastline facing the black hole, seawater rises into a colossal arch that defies all logic. The ocean attempts to follow the gravity well upward, forming a towering wall of water that blots out the horizon. Ships levitate for a terrifying instant, carried upward by the surge before crashing back into the violent churn. Whirlpools twist into colossal spirals. The sea becomes a vertical storm. The crust is overwhelmed. Plates snap like bones under unbearable weight. Lava bursts from newly torn cracks. Jets of molten rock shoot into the air in fiery fountains. Ash joins the blackened sky. Lightning forks across clouds of vaporized ocean. The atmosphere becomes a cauldron of fire and steam. And where the pull is greatest, matter itself begins to unravel. A human body is not a solid structure, but a fragile balance of forces that hold cells together. Gravity from the black hole yanks harder on a person's feet than their head. The body becomes a stretching thread of pain that meets oblivion faster than nerves can report agony. Scientists call this spaghettification. Nature calls it the simplest outcome of uneven force. Even rock is not spared. Boulders elongate into strings of dust that shimmer like silver hair pulled into the night. Metallic structures bend until they resemble liquid sculptures. Entire mountains may become tall, thin spires for a moment before snapping apart. The air becomes a storm of glass shards and powdered earth, yet sound remains strangely muted under the weight of distortion. Some humans see the chaos as slow-motion tragedies, while others perceive only an instant of impossible terror. Time disagreement fractures perception. Nobody experiences the same second the same way. Then suddenly, gravity loosens. The black hole races onward, no longer close enough to command Earth's bones. Silence follows, but the silence does not bring relief. It brings the beginning of consequences that will continue long after the visitor has vanished into space. The instant the black hole moves beyond its closest passage, Earth begins the violent process of trying to become itself again. But planets do not heal like living creatures. They do not knit wounds or soothe fractures. Instead, they react with catastrophic fury. The tidal bulge that rose toward the sky collapses downward with unstoppable weight. Oceans that were lifted by gravity fall back toward the globe in walls of water taller than any mountain chain. These tsunami waves sprint around the planet, crashing into every coastline with force powerful enough to erase entire regions from maps. Cities still standing after the stretching now drown beneath torrents that sweep away buildings as if they were children's toys. Skyscrapers are snapped apart by black water laced with debris. Cars, boats, skyscraper fragments, and entire forests swirl together in deadly currents that show no mercy. Shorelines that once shaped trade, culture, and civilization are reduced to churned rubble under a grey and furious sea. The crust, beneath this deluge, convulses. The release of tension is not gentle. Megaquakes race outward from the places that were pulled hardest. They slam through continents faster than the speed of sound. Land ripples like waves on a pond. Cities far from oceans crumble as streets buckle and swallow anything that once relied on a flat surface. Ancient mountains collapse into avalanches that bury valleys and rivers. Volcanoes detonate like cannons loaded with molten earth. Ash fills the air. Darkness spreads again. Earth's molten interior, rattled like a bell struck by a hammer, sloshes within its underground chambers. Magma forces its way upward along every weakness opened by the gravitational assault. The planet becomes a web of erupting fissures. New islands rise out of the ocean in pillars of smoke. Entire lakes vanish into sinkholes that drop their waters into the mantle, sending explosions of steam howling back to the surface. Lava surges across landscapes, igniting forests already broken by storms. The atmosphere itself has been dislocated. Air currents that once circled the globe in predictable patterns now tear through the sky without logic or mercy. Superstorms form in the blink of an eye. Tornadoes dance across open plains and cities alike, ripping apart the ruins left by quakes and floods. Clouds churn with volcanic ash and the pulverized dust of fallen buildings. Lightning flashes continuously, illuminating a world that looks nothing like the one that existed moments before. Humanity would try to comprehend what has happened, but comprehension is impossible when everything changes faster than thought can adjust. Survivors are pitched into a nightmare where the horizon flickers with flames and the ground shivers beneath every step. The sky growls with distant thunder that never ends. The air tastes of sulfur and scorched minerals. Every direction holds danger. There is nowhere safe. And then comes the fallout from the heavens. The moon, once a familiar companion, has become a hostile ring of fragments. The closest portions of that ring respond violently to Earth's shifting gravity. Boulders the size of skyscrapers break from their unstable orbits and plummet downward. Fire streaks across the sky in glowing rivers of destruction. The bombardment does not end quickly. It becomes a part of life, a rain of death that punishes the surface at random. Sometimes several fall within an hour. Sometimes days pass without a strike. The uncertainty is itself another wound. Meanwhile, the very shape of Earth alters. The crust has stretched beyond its natural limits and will never regain its exact former geometry. Coastlines move inward. New inland seas form where the land has subsided. Old mountain ranges fall while new ones rise. The map of Earth must be redrawn, but no one has the comfort or time to draw it. In the midst of this chaos, something even more profound has been shaken. Earth's magnetic heart, the core, once spinning smoothly like a gyroscope, now wobbles with disorientation. Electric currents inside the liquid metal shift, weakening the magnetic shield that has protected life from solar radiation since the earliest days of the planet. Auroras spread across latitudes where they do not belong, shimmering above deserts and equatorial forests. They are beautiful but terrifying, a sign that radiation from the sun is now reaching deeper into the atmosphere. Electronics falter, networks collapse, even migrating animals lose their sense of direction. All of this unfolds not over millennia, not over centuries, but over minutes and hours following that single moment when the black hole passed closest. Earth has survived, but Earth is no longer the same planet. Life continues, but life has been thrown into a desperate struggle just to endure one more day beneath a wounded sky. The black hole continues onward without turning back. Yet its departure has unleashed a world that may never recover from its single second of hell. In the days that follow the closest approach, the chaos does not fade. It evolves. Earth reels like a stunned giant trying to find balance after a terrible blow. Yet balance has been lost forever. The planet spins on an axis that trembles rather than turns. The length of a day changes by fractions that feel small in measurement, but massive in effect. Sunlight arrives at hours it should not. Night overstays its welcome in places where people once trusted the rise of dawn. Clocks become suggestions rather than rulers. Gravity has rewritten time. Survivors emerge from shelters and shattered buildings into a world they cannot recognize. Familiar landmarks are erased. Coastlines that once defined continents now lie underwater, buried beneath dark layers of debris. Rivers furious from earthquakes and melted glaciers carve new paths that slice through town and farm alike. Mountains that stood for millions of years now bleed molten stone from fresh wounds. Villages perched peacefully in highlands find themselves suddenly on the brink of collapsing fault cliffs that stretch downward into glowing abysses. Every day brings a new disaster because the planet is not yet done buckling. The tidal flexing from the black hole has stored unimaginable tension inside the crust. That tension now releases impulses. Quakes reach every inhabited region. Some buildings somehow remain standing after the first assault, only to crumble days later when a dormant fault awakens. Entire mountain valleys drop without warning, plunging fields and forests into seething magma seas below. Volcanoes continue erupting with brutal persistence. Their ash travels across continents, turning skies murky grey. The sun becomes a faint smudge behind thick haze. Temperatures plummet. Frost coats tropical trees while coastal lands steam from geological heat, rising beneath the surface. Storms scatter lightning without rain. Forests ignite from volcanic embers, only to be drowned by sudden walls of water driven inland from unstable shores. The phases of destruction alternate, but never relent. All the while, the atmosphere thins imperceptibly. Molecules lifted high by earlier gravitational pulling struggle to return to ground level. Solar radiation strikes harder through weakened magnetic shielding. The air becomes sharp in the lungs, dry and thinner. Even breathing begins to feel like work. The bombardment from above continues with merciless rhythm. Moon fragments that once shone as a gentle companion now punish the planet endlessly. Some streaks of flame remain small, burning up harmlessly. Others arrive like falling mountains that slam into land with the force of ancient asteroid impacts. Shockwaves ripple across hundreds of kilometers. Dust plumes rise higher than any cloud. The night sky flashes again and again as fire rains upon a world already burning from within. And still, the black hole does not slow. It races toward the horizon, a shrinking void wrapped in a ring of warped starlight. It does not look back. Tonight it will be farther away, tomorrow farther still. But distance does not undo devastation. Earth trembles from what it has lost. A familiar companion torn into dust, air shaken loose, gravity disordered, stability shattered. For many survivors, hope becomes the only fragile resource more precious than food or clean water. People cling to one another beneath the dimming sun. They speak softly about rebuilding. They share stories of the world as it once was. Calm seas, predictable seasons, nights lit by a constant moon. Memories become the last connection to normality. Belief that life can continue becomes the only shield against despair. Yet hope alone cannot secure a future. Earth must find a new equilibrium. It must learn to exist with its new orbit, its fractured crust, and its shifting atmosphere. Life must adapt to a planet remade by a visitor that stayed only long enough to prove how powerless the world can be when gravity chooses a different path. In the cosmic silence that returns, survivors might look upward through smoke-filled skies searching for meaning. They will see stars swirling in patterns that seem unchanged. They will imagine the monstrous object now far away, racing deeper into the Milky Way. It will destroy nothing else today. It will not even remember Earth existed. 1 second of hell is all it needed. Earth is alive, but Earth is no longer safe. The aftermath will last lifetimes, and the universe has already turned the page. When the black hole finally sails past our world, the worst second in Earth's history has ended. But a new era of torment has only begun. Gravity does not create wounds that heal quickly. The passing force has ripped apart what took billions of years to build. Earth now spins through a universe that has lost its patience with stability. The orbit of our planet around the sun is no longer a gentle circle. It has become a stretched path that carries Earth far from the warmth of the sun and then hurls it back too close again. During the long, distant portion of this new orbit, daylight becomes thin and cold. Glaciers grow from the poles, creeping outward over drowned coastline ruins. Frozen oceans crack and expand. Cities become buried beneath ice sheets thicker than skyscrapers. Life must retreat inward into shelters heated by dwindling power or by volcanic warmth that seeps up from a furious planet core. Then, after many months of darkness, the orbit swings Earth dangerously close to the sun. The once frozen world heats too fast. Ice melts into cascading floods that tear across continents. Former valleys become churning inland seas. The new coastline draws breath only for a short time before the cycle reverses again. The seasons stretch into extremes of ice age and inferno, leaving no room for the gentle rhythms that life once needed. Overhead, the remains of the moon no longer glow as a calm, circular companion. Instead, a glittering ring encircles Earth. In sunlight, the debris flashes like shattered gemstones scattered across the heavens. But beauty here is a lie. That ring is made of fragments large enough to erase cities. Those pieces collide relentlessly. Each collision fractures them further and sends swarms of fiery meteors spiraling downward through the atmosphere. Every night becomes a battlefield of falling stars. Tiny fragments disintegrate in glowing streaks. Larger ones roar into oceans and continents with the strength of volcanic eruptions. The air shakes with distant booms. Tsunami after tsunami radiates from furious seas. Surviving coastlines are forced to retreat again and again. No ocean is calm anymore. As the skies glow with incoming fire, the ground below trembles. Earth's crust remains unstable. The surge of energy from that 1 second of hell continues to ripple outward through mantle and core. Plate boundaries grind together in relentless violence. Volcanoes roar like exhausted beasts drawing final breaths. Ash climbs upward in black columns that twist into the thin atmosphere. Sunlight must now pass through that suffocating veil, and most of it does not make it through. Daylight dims into a permanent dusk. Plants wither. Forests collapse into silent fields of blackened trunks. Animals wander starved, searching for food that no longer grows. Some species vanish into extinction so quietly that no human ever knew they existed. The chain of life that once stretched across Earth like a web now hangs in tatters, with many strands broken beyond repair. The oceans respond in unpredictable ways. Warm water trapped near the surface evaporates into monstrous storms. Cold water beneath surges upward when winds cease to guide the seas. Strange currents form. Fishermen who once navigated familiar coasts find their maps useless, their compasses confused, their boats tossed by waves that rise without warning. Great swirls form in the open ocean, deep enough to drag entire fleets into watery spirals of doom. Beneath the surface, coral reefs bleach in the dying light. Creatures that once thrived in warm shallows now freeze or suffocate. The once rich symphony of ocean life becomes a hushed murmur. Even deep sea dwellers feel the turmoil from above, as earthquakes rattle their hidden world and cracks in the ocean floor release boiling heat. Human survivors struggle not only against the shifting world, but against time itself. Months of ice and months of boiling heat replace the old seasons. Farming becomes a desperate experiment. Food must be grown quickly during the brief windows of tolerable conditions. Shelters must be sealed against bitter cold, then against blinding heat. Engineering marvels that once defined civilization are now trivial compared to the challenge of keeping breath in lungs and water in veins. Dust and ash falling from above poison rivers and lakes. Clean water becomes treasure. People filter what they can with cloth and charcoal. Wells are dug deep, but quakes collapse many of them. Communities relocate inland, yet still find themselves hunted by drought or flood. Languages and nations matter less and less. Survival is the only identity left. Electric power flickers in the few places where wires still carry it. Satellites that once guided communication and weather prediction have been scattered from orbit or fried by radiation that now penetrates a weakened magnetic shield. News from distant lands vanishes. Humanity shrinks into pockets of isolation, tiny islands of persistence on a wounded world. Above this shattered planet, the black hole continues into the stars, indifferent to the ruin it leaves behind. But the entire solar system will remember its passing. The sun itself has been nudged into a slightly altered path around the center of the Milky Way. This disturbance will ripple through billions upon billions of kilometers, shifting gravitational relationships between distant stars. In time, Other worlds might feel the echoes of the intruder that nearly erased Earth, yet Earth still spins. There is a stubbornness in life that refuses surrender. In deep caves warmed by geothermal heat, algae cling to stone and continue converting dim chemical energy into growth. In the ocean trenches, blind crustaceans swarm near hydrothermal vents that still breathe fire into the water. In hidden refuges between crumbling mountains, small bands of humans cultivate crops under artificial light, learning to mimic the lost sun. They look upward through volcanic haze at the shimmering ring of what once shaped their tides. And they feel both grief and awe. They understand now that the universe is not built for comfort or longevity. It is built for motion, collision, transformation. Beauty exists, but it is never safe. Earth goes on spinning because nothing stopped it. Life goes on breathing because nothing pulled the last breath away. There is pain in every sunrise. There is resilience in every heartbeat. And in the cold silence between stars, the black hole continues its endless journey, ignorant of the worlds it breaks. Earth will rebuild or perish, but the universe will not notice either way. Rogue black holes are not rare phantoms invented for fearful imaginations. They are real children of dead stars, born when giant suns collapse under their own gravity until the fabric of space-time itself caves inward. After the explosion fades and starlight dies, the leftover core becomes a silent traveler, heavier than entire planetary systems, but smaller than a city. Such remnants do not shine. They leave no glow to betray their presence. They move through the galaxy like arrows shot in darkness, guided only by invisible currents of gravity. Astronomers estimate that the Milky Way holds more than 100 million stellar mass black holes. Not a handful, not a curious few. A population large enough that almost every region of the galaxy may one day feel their passage, and yet they remain unseen. The only reason we know they exist at all is because physics demands their presence. We see stars tugged by companions that emit no light. We see brief distortions in starlight that follow the rules of gravitational lensing. We detect ripples in space-time when black holes collide in far distant locations. Most black holes drift alone without feeding on gas or tearing apart unlucky stars. Those are the quiet ones, the wanderers that almost no telescope can find. Their paths stretch across unimaginable distances and timescales. Some are flung at tremendous speeds when their partner stars explode, thrown from one region of the galaxy to the next like stones ricocheting across the surface of a cosmic lake. Others glide slowly along the spiral arms, carried by the slow swirl of the Milky Way as it turns like a colossal wheel of light and matter. The solar system is only one tiny island in this ocean of drifting mass. The space between stars is enormous. To cross from one star to another would take generations even if we moved at impossible speeds. That great emptiness makes direct collisions between star systems extremely unlikely. Earth has survived for billions of years because empty distances offer protection. Planets rarely meet strangers. But unlikely is not a promise. Time is a painter with infinite patience. It applies its brush in quiet strokes over millions upon millions of years, and even low chances slowly accumulate into possibilities that cannot be dismissed. NASA, the European Space Agency, and observatories around Earth work together to search for the faint clues left by rogue black holes. They scan starfields for sudden shifts in brightness, where light is bent by passing mass. They track stars that wobble in suspicious ways, as though an invisible neighbor pulls gently from nearby. Every detection adds another point to a growing map of hidden dangers, yet that map is incomplete. It might always be incomplete, because the majority of black holes will never reveal themselves unless they pass in front of a star at the perfect angle or interact with another object in a way that makes energy visible. In truth, we often do not know where these objects are until they are already close. Most black holes drift harmlessly through the quiet dark, never approaching another star closely enough to disturb a world. But some carry momentum from the moment of their birth. When a massive star explodes unevenly, the surviving core can be kicked into motion like a slingshot stone. It races through the galaxy at extraordinary speed, faster than any human spacecraft could imagine achieving. These runaways follow no stable orbit. They do not belong to any star family. They are wanderers with unpredictable futures. The Milky Way is not a calm, well-organized neighborhood. It is a vast city in constant motion. Stars orbit the galactic center like dancers in a colossal spiral. They drift closer together, then farther apart, guided by tides of gravity that no single force commands. Every few 100 million years, the solar system passes through more crowded regions of the galaxy where the chance of a close encounter rises. Comets become unsettled. Asteroids shift their paths. Invisible drifters venture into our general neighborhood. Most times, nothing happens. Silence remains silence, but sometimes the quiet hides motion. Sometimes, a lonely object forged in the death of a star finds its way into the wrong pathway at precisely the wrong time. A black hole does not need to strike Earth to destroy us. It only needs to pass close enough for gravity to begin its work. A flyby at a distance many times farther than the outermost planets could still distort orbits. A pass just beyond the boundary of our system could send comets into long falling arcs toward the inner worlds. A close approach could twist Earth's path just enough to bring endless winter or endless heat. Catastrophe does not require collision, it requires proximity. Astronomers already track a handful of black holes by studying the motion of bright stars tied to them by gravity. Others have been discovered only because they passed in front of a distant star and briefly bent its light. These glimpses happen by chance. We might detect a few per decade if instruments are pointed in the correct direction at the correct time. But for every known black hole, countless more remain invisible, silent, unmapped. There is a chance that one could be moving toward us right now. That chance is small, yet it exists in every moment. Because in the immensity of cosmic time, even the unlikely becomes inevitable. Understanding this does not mean we surrender to fear. Knowledge grants protection. Awareness invites preparation. The same physics that reveals the threat also gives humanity the ability to search and anticipate. With enough time, danger becomes manageable, perhaps even avoidable. The universe does not seek to destroy us. It simply does not care if it does. We must be the ones who care. As humanity studies deeper into the night sky, fear transforms into strategy. Astronomers develop new surveys that watch for the slightest change in a star's position. They refine instruments that can detect gravity's fingerprint on light with astonishing precision. They map every known stellar mass black hole that reveals itself, hoping to mark the invisible routes these remnants follow. They do not expect victory over nature. They expect understanding. Perhaps one day, telescopes will be so powerful that no hidden mass can slip past unnoticed. Space agencies imagine fleets of gravitational observatories positioned throughout the solar system, each sensitive enough to detect the soft tug of a distant, silent traveler long before it reaches dangerous proximity. The first warning could arrive decades or centuries in advance, allowing humanity to prepare for what must come. A warning would give us time to build, time to relocate fragile infrastructure, time to strengthen planetary defenses, time to move outposts of life beyond Earth, time to become more than a single vulnerable species clinging to one damaged world. Black holes would no longer be cosmic assassins that arrive without notice. They would be known travelers whose passage we can predict and endure. The most important question for our future is simple. When the universe sends its next test, will humanity still be here to face it? The story of Earth is built upon narrow escapes and fragile stability. Our world formed in the fire of collisions. Oceans arrived likely from wandering ice that survived violent impacts. Life evolved because conditions remained gentle for just long enough. Evolution rewarded curiosity. Curiosity built tools. Tools built civilization. Now civilization looks outward, not with primal fear, but with a desire to understand the rules that govern the cosmos. In those rules lies our fate. The chance of a rogue black hole striking terror into the solar system within a single human generation is very small. But the universe does not plan its events around our brief lifespans. If a threat can happen once in a billion years, and the universe spans billions upon billions of years, then the improbable becomes the expected. Quiet danger is always rising somewhere beyond sight, but so is potential. The same universe that breeds silent risks offers endless space for survival if we learn to reach it. Earth does not have to be our only home. Even the threat of disaster becomes a calling, urging us to leave the cradle of our birth and grow into a species worthy of the stars. Humanity already knows that rogue black holes drift somewhere out there. We know that our galaxy is filled with invisible forces that will eventually test our resilience. We know that the night sky, though elegant and serene to the naked eye, hides restless masses that will not alter their paths to spare us. So the question changes. It is no longer, will a wandering black hole come too close? The question is, will we be ready when it does? The danger is real, the timeline is long, the stakes are absolute, but we have one advantage no other species on Earth ever possessed. We can see the threat before it arrives. We can choose to act before the danger appears above us in warped starlight. The universe is filled with silent travelers, yet humanity has learned to search the silence. We fear the dark, but we also illuminate it. The Milky Way is a majestic spiral that seems peaceful from a great distance. Stars drift in glittering currents. Nebulae bloom like cosmic flowers. Clustered suns form gentle arcs that glow across the darkness. To the human eye, the galaxy appears graceful, balanced, and eternal. That illusion comforts us. It encourages the belief that space is orderly and kind. But hidden beneath the beauty lies a restless truth. The universe is not a sanctuary. It is a battlefield shaped by gravity, motion, and chance. Black holes are only one kind of invisible danger in that battlefield. They are remnants of mighty stars that burned violently and died young, collapsing into darkness so absolute that even light cannot return. But they are far from the only unseen threat that wanders the void. Space is filled with objects that do not shine and do not break silence. Rogue planets travel through the dark without a star of their own. Asteroids drift through the emptiness with enough mass to scar a world if they strike. Streams of dark matter weave through the galaxy like rivers we cannot feel or see. Radiation bursts erupt without warning from distant corners. Even the gravitational currents of passing stars can quietly undermine the stability of entire solar systems. Life thrives only when the balance is perfect. Too much heat or too much cold, too much pressure or too little atmosphere, too much ultraviolet or too little magnetic shielding, and existence collapses. Earth has survived only because our planet orbits at the perfect distance from our sun, because our sun travels a safe path around the center of the galaxy, and because the universe has allowed long stretches of relative calm. But that calm has always been temporary. The galaxy changes shape over time, like a great tide with waves that take millions of years to rise and fall. Stars drift closer or farther. Gravitational pulls shift. Invisible travelers wander nearer. Humanity has lived only a moment in this immense timeline. We have opened our eyes to the stars very recently, and our knowledge is still young. We know that black holes exist. We know that supernovas can unleash floods of radiation powerful enough to strip atmospheres from planets. We know that the Milky Way contains massive objects that sweep silently across the dark. We know that our position in space is not permanent. Yet knowledge does not dissolve fear. It sharpens it. Every astronomer who studies the cosmos understands that the universe is not built around Earth or shaped to protect humanity. Space does not hate us. It does not love us. It simply does not notice us. The forces that govern stars and galaxies operate on scales so enormous that the existence of an entire species on a tiny blue world is no more significant than dust swirling in a single ray of sunlight. Still, we search. Still, we measure. Still, we watch. Because survival demands awareness. Instruments on Earth and in orbit scan the skies at all hours. Telescopes listen for subtle distortions in starlight that reveal the presence of hidden mass. Space probes map distant gravitational fields. Supercomputers simulate the paths of drifting stars for thousands of centuries ahead. Every new piece of data becomes another line in the map of existence. The search for rogue black holes is part of a larger mission to understand the unseen universe. We must know what moves in the dark, not because we expect to control it, but because foreknowledge is our single advantage. Time is the one gift science might give us. Time to act. Time to prepare. Time to survive. Humanity stands at a turning point where technology finally allows us to perceive threats long before they strike. The more we look, the more we see that the night sky is not empty. It is crowded. It is alive with motion. And within that motion drift ancient forces older than every tree, river, and heartbeat on Earth. The vision that comes from such awareness is humbling. It reminds us that every breath depends on a fragile balance. It reminds us that the universe can reshape our home in an instant. It reminds us that survival is not guaranteed. But it also reveals something powerful. We are not blind anymore. The more humanity learns about the cosmos, the more we appreciate that danger does not always arrive with bright warning signs. Sometimes it moves quietly, hidden inside the very structure of space. The galaxy is filled with invisible architecture. Dark matter shapes the orbits of stars though it cannot be seen. Massive gravitational tides ripple from passing clusters. Space itself curves and bends, guiding objects along paths that no one can witness directly. Even when the night appears calm, unseen motion unfolds. Compared to these titanic structures, Earth is a delicate experiment. Our planet holds on to life because every physical condition has remained within narrow boundaries for eons. A thin atmosphere blocks radiation. A strong magnetic shield deflects storms of particles from the sun. A single moon steadies our tilt. A gentle orbit regulates seasons. Even our position in the galaxy protects us. We live between spiral arms, away from regions where supernovas erupt too frequently. We inhabit a quieter lane of the Milky Way. But cosmic quiet is never absolute. Stars wander. Clouds of gas drift. Black holes roam without purpose or pattern. A nearby supernova could send a blast of radiation across space strong enough to sterilize Earth's surface. A rogue planet could knock smaller bodies toward us and turn the sky into a rain of fire. A gravitational disturbance could tilt Earth's path just enough to erase balances that took ages to form. Space does not need to strike directly to deliver catastrophe, and yet the same universe that threatens life also makes it possible. Black holes forge heavy elements in the violent deaths of stars. Those elements become planets and creatures. Rogue planets may carry frozen seeds of life across the dark. Gravitational tides sculpt galaxies into spirals rich with starbirth. Even the dangers are part of a grand design that allows existence to bloom on some worlds, however briefly. Humanity now stands at a unique threshold. For the first time in Earth's history, its dominant species understands the forces that could one day end everything. We can calculate how gravity shapes the cosmos. We can detect the faint bending of light from unseen objects. We can launch probes beyond the reach of the sun. We can imagine sheltering in deep space or beneath protective domes. Knowledge has become the only shield our planet possesses. There is a growing awareness that Earth will not be safe forever. Not from time, not from space, not from the inevitable shifts that come when a planet rides through a galaxy filled with silent threats. That understanding is not a cause for despair. It is motivation. Life can only continue if it adapts. And humanity has always adapted by solving the mysteries of its surroundings. We have begun mapping what cannot be seen. Gravitational lensing surveys reveal temporary warping in star fields that betray the presence of dark travelers. Observatories search for faint wobbles in the motions of stars that might indicate hidden companions. Space missions aim to measure ripples in space-time itself, caused when black holes collide in distant realms. Each discovery makes the universe less mysterious and more predictable. We still cannot alter the paths of stellar giants, but we can anticipate their arrival. Time is the greatest prize this knowledge can offer. A warning decades or centuries in advance would allow us to build defenses, escape routes, or even new homes among the stars. The future of civilization may depend on spreading beyond a single fragile world. If Earth is only the birthplace of humanity rather than its entire story, then the universe may take life from this single seed and spread it across 1,000 worlds. Curiosity becomes survival. It would be easy to look up at the dark and feel fear. But fear is not the message carried by the light of the stars. That message speaks of vastness, possibility, and endurance. It tells us that the universe is immense enough to contain danger and wonder in equal measure. The same forces that destroy also create. The same gravity that drags worlds into death also forms galaxies of breathtaking beauty. And humanity, a species that began by fearing the night, has learned to understand it. Humanity has always looked at the stars with two hearts. One heart sees beauty. It sees timeless constellations and wonders if distant suns shine upon other minds, other stories, other hopes. It sees a darkness that invites exploration. The other heart sees fear. It knows that space holds cold silence capable of ending life in an instant. It knows that predators roam the galaxy without light or mercy. It knows that humans are small. Yet it is the combination of these two emotions, wonder and fear together, that has driven us from caves to telescopes, from fireside myths to spaceships that ride pillars of flame into orbit. We learned to conquer mountains because we feared them. We learned to cross oceans because we feared what might arrive from beyond the horizon. We learned to understand the sky because not understanding was more frightening than the truth. That same courage must guide us now. The universe will not soften. Its dangers will not fade. Rogue black holes will continue to drift. Radiation will continue to ripple outward from dying stars. Asteroids will continue to follow paths that someday may intersect ours. Planets torn from their own systems will wander the cold, invisible until they pass too near. Space will continue to challenge life at every turn. But humanity is no longer defenseless. We have built intelligence capable of reaching beyond instinct. We have begun to spread our presence beyond the exact ground where evolution first shaped our hands and minds. We have placed machines on Mars and probes on comets. We have sent instruments out into interstellar space that now drift where sunlight grows weak. Our technology is the first fragile bridge between a species born on one world and a future among many worlds. One day, we may give the solar system more than Earth as a home for life. We may send colonies to moons warmed by volcanic seas. We may reach for planets orbiting other stars. We may build stations that float freely in the dark and create light of their own. We may learn to control gravity, to bend space-time, to move with intention through the ocean of stars. If that day arrives, black holes will no longer be predators that hunt us. They will be destinations that teach us how nature writes its most advanced physics. Even now, long before such mastery exists, we stand on a foundation stronger than fear. We have the ability to predict motion and measure invisible forces. We can watch a star wobble and know that a hidden companion pulls at it. We can detect the faintest curve in light and know that something massive passes between us and a distant sun. We can look at the near future of the galaxy and forecast what might come our way. Knowledge gives us warning. Warning gives us preparation. Preparation gives us a chance. That chance will define whether humanity becomes a brief spark extinguished by cosmic accident, or a civilization that thrives through every challenge the universe can summon. Earth has endured for billions of years. Humans have endured for only a heartbeat compared to that time. Yet in that heartbeat, we have unlocked the laws that govern the cosmos. We now understand that black holes do not hunt us. They simply continue their journeys through space-time, shaped by the same laws that guide the planets. We see that every danger in the night sky is also a clue that helps us understand reality more deeply. The stars are teachers as much as they are threats. The darkness between them is the canvas upon which the universe paints its most important lessons. If the universe seems indifferent to human survival, then perhaps the answer is not to demand kindness from the cosmos, but to rise strong enough that survival becomes our own responsibility. We were never promised safety. We were given intelligence instead. That is our tool, our weapon, our hope. When humanity looks into the night sky and feels fear, that is good. Fear keeps us watchful. But when we look into that same sky and feel awe, that is even better. Awe keeps us curious. A balance of both will keep us alive. The universe hides silent monsters among its stars, but it also offers infinite places where life can grow if it dares to reach. What seems like a threat from the darkness may one day become only another challenge that humanity overcame on its journey to the light. We search the night sky for monsters, but the deadliest wander without light. Silent, unseen, unstoppable. Yet still, we lift our eyes and look. Because curiosity travels farther than fear can run. Because knowledge lights the path ahead. Because humanity's future lies not beneath the heavens, but among them.